So I have a double whammy book review for you today. Yay! So it's like 2 books that you can glean some beautiful insight from. And the first book is an interpretation of the Tao Te Ching, a little pocket tiny version. You can see in relation to my fingers how small that is. And it's written by Stephen Mitchell. And Stephen Mitchell, if you don't know who that is a beautiful linguist, Eastern linguist who interprets ancient texts. And he happens to be married to Byron Katie, who wrote a book called 1,000 Names for Joy, which was basically Stephen Mitchell, her husband, giving her some excerpts from this book. And we get to glean her insights as an enlightened being and see how she interprets this book. So super cool. What I find is these readings, you can read these ancient texts, like the Bhagavad Gita or the sutras, the Yoga Sutras, or there's tons of ancient texts. And we can read them, but oftentimes have a hard time understanding what they mean without having an actual physical practice. Because here's the thing about Lao-Tzu. Whoever this author is that wrote this book, they don't really know. Nobody really knows how this came into fruition. My favorite story was from Osho. I was listening to a discourse, and he said Lao-Tzu was trying to escape his country from military strife, and he got to the border, and the border patrol people said, before you leave the country, you're going to sit down and write some wisdom in a book because we know you have a shit ton inside you. And he said, I can't write this down. This is a living, breathing practice. And so many masters have said it. As soon as I write the words down onto paper, they die. They become, ink to paper things, and it's no longer a living practice. And a lot of very skillful masters have warned of that, because this is a living, breathing practice. You have to experience and evolve through and grow through and deconstruct in your own being. But there is guidance and wisdom out there, and this little gem is one of them, a little book of guidance and wisdom. And another important point to talk about is all of these philosophies, whether you study Zen or you study Buddhism or you study yoga or this version of yoga or that version of yoga, or you study different lineages and styles and practices, all of them have an underbelly of the same tenets. No self, empty self, non-duality, call it what you want. They all have a different kind of terminology for that. And Dharma, and metta, and loving kindness, and compassion, and impermanence, change, flow, whatever the name is. All of these philosophies have beautiful tenets at their underbelly. So I'm totally a bi-spiritual or a bi-practitioner. And I study everything because you get a little bit different insight. You get to glean a little bit different insight from each lineage. Without getting attached to the philosophy. Because the other thing Osho talked about was you don't get lost in the fucking philosophy of it, the thinking of it. This isn't a thinking process. This is a feeling, living, breathing practice and process, this deconstruction process. So don't get lost there. But this is a fun little book. And I want to read you a little excerpt. This is the first page of it. So many insights in this. So many insights in this one simple page. And he's talking about how you can't when you write a teaching down, this is why they used to pass the teaching on the lineage from teacher to student, because it was part you being in the presence of that master or that teacher that you're like, you absorb it in ways that aren't intellectual. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. So relevant right now, that one. Leaning into the mystery and not getting caught in the desire to be somewhere you're not. So many interpretations of just that one line. Yet mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. The source is called darkness. Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding. This is a little juicy gem to get into right now, you guys. We are coming through what we think, what we experience as what we, it really isn't, but what we think is this time of darkness. And we can get lost in that. But instead, if we turn to the mystery of the moment, the world unfolding in such a beautiful, unique way as it has ever unfolded in our lifetimes right now, what if we looked at it from that perspective? So thanks for joining me, you guys, and journeying on with me and watching all my crazy stuff. And I would love to hear from you if you've read this book, or you want to share or start a dialogue. My door is always open. So thanks for joining me today, you guys. Namaste.